right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Lunch and Learn webinar with WhyMaker. We are so excited to have you all here with us today. My name is Alejandra, and I'll be your host today. And we are so thrilled to spotlight one of our inspiring partners, CreositySpace, a company on a mission to help young learners connect to STEM through creativity, innovation, and real-world problem solving. CuriositySpace offers a fresh, innovation-based K-5 science curriculum that meets students where they are and invents with them to think and helps them think like innovators, questioning, experimenting, and creating new ideas that can change their world. Their materials start with the Book of Ideas, encouraging students to record, explore, and build on their own ideas and expand into makerspace packs, supplemental units, and full curriculum experiences that integrate across science, engineering, ELA, and math. We are honored today to be joined by Kath from CuriositySpace. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We are very excited to learn more about your mission, your curriculum, and the impact you're making in classrooms and learning spaces across the country. And a quick note before we begin, we will have time for a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go. So now, without further ado, Kath, the floor is all yours.
Great. Thanks, Alejandra. I really appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to come and chat with some of the teachers in your network. And I appreciate everyone who's taken some time today to hear what we have to say and to learn a little bit about innovation-based instruction. Today, let me see if I can move the slides forward properly. All right, so today we're going to start with a quick introduction about myself and also CuriositySpace and what innovation-based instruction is and why we think it's so powerful. Then we'll move to the bulk of the webinar. Will be in two chunks where we'll do we'll explore some lesson concepts and some ways you can use innovation-based instruction in your classrooms and incorporate it with the way and the strategies you're already using. And then we'll have time for some wrap up and questions at the end. So to start, I want to be really upfront. I always start with this. I'm not a classroom teacher. I have a STEM background and have been a practicing engineer for over 25 years. That being said, I've been in the innovation and entrepreneurship space for a number of decades and have been both formally and informally working with teachers and students my entire career. With that, I'm not a teacher, but they are our guiding force. So all of the CuriositySpace content has been developed with teachers and students to incorporating their feedback, hearing from them what's helpful, what works in the elementary classroom, what serves both the teachers and the students. So to start with, I want to take a moment just to baseline or to lay the foundation of why we think innovation is so powerful. We've been at this for over a decade. We've been in hundreds of classrooms with thousands of students, and this is what we found. The thing about innovation and entrepreneurship is those concepts center and validate the individual's ideas. They're based around who they are, and students' ideas are the core of who they are and what they see themselves as. And when students see that their ideas and the things that interest them are important, they feel like their ideas matter and their interests matter. So framing your instruction around making students feel important, making their ideas feel important, really helps their self-confidence and helps their engagement. And we've seen that it works. When students' ideas feel like they're being validated, their confidence increases, and with increased confidence always comes increased engagement. And I don't have to tell any of you guys that increased engagement leads to increased achievement. And that this sort of equation or this cause and effect relationship forms the basis of everything we do at CuriositySpace. So I did send out, I know Alejandro sent out some questions ahead of time to ask folks if they can share any thoughts they had about what comes to their mind when they think of invention or innovation. And I realize some folks might be sort of in the middle of multitasking because I know it is the middle of the day. So I'll give you an opportunity to chime in, but if not, we can just keep moving forward.
Okay, I came off mute.
Awesome.
We did
Okay.
get some answers
Oh, great.
from the public here. Let me look into the chat.
Super.
Creation, ingenuity. These are these. This comes from Kevin, who's on the chat right now. However,
Yeah.
we did hear back from some people also on social media asking about
Yeah.
the easiest, what is the most simple way for classroom integration in an already busy schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're trying to bring in these types of curriculums that, yes, they're an addition, but you need to
Right.
kind of be creative in your own time and just classroom, just how you handle that. So that
Yeah,
definitely.
for sure. And we'll spend, yeah, that's great. And we'll spend some time talking about how innovation and how specifically innovation prompts can be used to address, to infuse STEM and STEM concepts into learning objectives you're already working on. So yeah, those were Kevin, those were some great ideas. Sometimes when I ask participants to think about innovation, I encourage them to sort of bin it into the common what, why, when, how, and who. And so, right, so what is innovation? It's creativities, but it's also failures. Why do we innovate? Well, because we're invested and interested in something new. When do we innovate? When we have a need for something, when there's a problem we want to solve. Um, the how is often one of my favorite things to think about. Um, I love reinforcing this idea of iteration and the concept of building off other ideas. A lot of times students think that science and engineering is about knowing the answer right away, and in fact, it isn't. As an engineer, I almost never know the answer when I start out something, but I have ideas, I build off of them, I try. They work in some ways, they fail in other ways, and I use both what works and what fails to build and to iterate. Um, and then who, and it's people who are risk takers or problem solvers, but really the who can be anyone. Um, so yeah, so enough of an introduction, and let's get on to the first sort of set of activities, and let's what I like to call let's invent. Let me orient myself in my slides. So today, I'm gonna ask you folks to put on their student hat and start thinking about creating their own inventions or own innovations. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with an innovation prompt. And so to begin with, what is an innovation prompt? Innovation prompts are open-ended questions or partial statements that invite students to draw on their personal experience and idea and use creative thinking to improve a thing or a situation. And so, and and so I like to encourage educators and teachers to think that, it's easy to create your own innovation prompt. They can be um, any question, design question, challenge question you can think of um, fits as an innovation prompt. The key is the parts that are in bold. So this open-ended nature, so the students can sort of go where their interests take them, and also this piece of personal experience. So it needs to be open-ended enough so students, especially students from different backgrounds or different experiences, can all participate equally. Um, on this next slide, I have a couple of examples of innovation prompts, and you can see how they are very open-ended and they incorporate things that are common to most students. So today in school, I had a great idea. We should reuse car tires to make. This could help our oceans stay clean and safe. What if we put solar panels on? I wish we could run airplanes, cars, and trucks on. And the list goes on. Um, the key thing with innovation prompts is that, again, there's there's enough of a structure to start a student on a thinking pathway, but not so prescribed that if you have 15 kids working on innovation prompts, you get 15 versions of the same answers, right? You want to get different versions, both as to keep it interesting as a teacher, but to encourage that creativity and individuality. Um, the great thing about innovation prompts is you don't actually need any special infrastructure to start inventing. A notebook and some innovation prompts is really all it takes. That being said, as Alejandra had mentioned, we have created a special inventing book called the Book of Ideas that can be helpful. These books have over a dozen innovation prompts in them, as well as a place for students to draw or write about their invention. Additionally, there are a series of entrepreneur quotes, young entrepreneur stories, and vocabulary around invention. So now it's time to put on your student hats, if you will. Um, we're going to pick from two innovation prompts. Um, we're going to pick from two innovation prompts that I have here on the screen. I'm not sure if they're large enough, so I'll just read them. The first one says, I wish my house had a. And the second one says, this could keep our oceans clean and safe. And I'd like folks who are online to take a moment, read over them, and pick one of them, the one that you like the best. Um, think of an invention and write or draw about your invention for the next, we'll say, 3 to 5 minutes. Um, in these workshops, I always like to say you can approach this innovation prompt with all the knowledge you have as an adult, but please try to channel the free-natured spirit of your students and that creativity. Um, and if we have time and if folks are able to, we will we'll share out and do some feedback, some rounds of feedback as we follow, once we're done. So we'll give folks a couple minutes to work on that. Right, maybe we'll take one more minute, so to 10 minutes before the hour. I'm notorious for going over on these webinars, so I'm really trying to keep to the time frame and to leave time for questions afterwards. So, all right, let's wrap up what we have. If folks are able, we'll do some sharing, but the the point of sharing out or chatting is to receive feedback, and to reflect on one's invention and one's ideas. And I always like when I ask folks to give feedback, I always like to remind them that it's good to say something nice or something positive um, about someone's idea or invention, and then provide a piece of a piece of feedback, is some critical feedback, maybe ask a clarifying question, to really practice those activities and the skills of giving and receiving respectful feedback. The other thing I like to do, especially with younger students, is to provide sort of a phrase bank of phrases they can use. Sometimes teachers decide specifically which phrases they're going to use in their classroom, or they pick 1 to 3 phrases that students have available to them when providing feedback. And not only does it give the students the tools they can use to provide feedback in a respectful fashion, it also depersonalizes the feedback a little bit because there's some structure to go with it. And so it just feels like part of the process, which it is, as opposed to someone saying that they think your idea was not a good idea. So again, some of these tools that can easily be worked into your classroom to help facilitate the feedback process. Now, does anyone have an invention that they want want to share with the group? Uh, no problem. I do have an invention. Oh, Liz, Alejandra, did you have one you wanted to share? No. Okay. I will share my invention, but I will ask someone to give me some feedback on it so we can go through these activities. So I pick for this the prompt, I wish my house had and my invention is a combination Roomba Swiffer. So I love the Roomba that I have to vacuum at night so I'm not there, but I have a lot of animals, and all of the cat and dog hair gets underneath the couch and underneath the furniture. And so the Roomba sort of does half the job. And I always have to either go over it with the Swiffer first or get the other vacuum out or whatever. And so I don't use the Roomba that much because it just seems like double of the work. Uh, but if I had an attachment on that Roomba that could get under the couch, that would be great for me. So that's something I wish my house had. Um, and I would love if someone could give me some feedback on this design.
I can give you some feedback. I like that design. However, I mean, I think it's really good. You're giving kind of like a little bit more of further functionality to a Roomba that already does a great job by reaching into those hard to reach areas. I wonder if maybe there could be I don't know, maybe a way to make sure that it doesn't get stuck into maybe something that's under the couch and it
Yeah.
doesn't break apart, or it could kind of be maybe instead of sucking up the dirt, maybe blowing function so that all the
Oh,
dust
yeah.
is flowed out of underneath the couch and then it's easy to collect it. I mean, that could be maybe one solution. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, that's like, I think that's great. Yeah, the stuck things get stuck all the time. And so that is a possible downside with the Swiffer attachment. So maybe, yeah, if I had a blower, then it could blow things underneath and then it could pick them up.
Right. Just to avoid the, maybe getting stuck under something
Yeah,
or
no,
that's
that's a great
one
idea.
example. Yeah.
Super. Does anyone else have any comments they wanted to add to my Swiffer Roomba?
We did have Kevin share their own invention or idea
Oh, awesome.
in the chat. Maybe we could also read that.
I wonder if I
I
can.
just wanted to comment that I also really like that your Roomba has ears.
Oh,
It almost looks like it has a little snout too.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, I think I might have also put a grabber on. Um, but and thank you. Yeah.
Great
Let me see
invention.
if I can open up the chat.
I can read it though. I can read the
Okay.
chat. So Kevin says, I wish my house had a metal and wood shop so I could design and build projects as they come to mind, like custom furniture, home improvements, one off gadgets to make life easier. I get immense satisfaction from working with my hands and building something functional and beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, awesome. So, and again, this is thanks for sharing that, Kevin. That's perfect. And it's a great example how a single innovation prompt can sort of spawn much different responses while still sort of covering some of the same concepts and some of the same learning objectives. So before we move to the next section, which is specifically around using innovation prompts to support writing, I was wondering if folks could think about what specifically around what learning objectives they could see being addressed by by this innovation prompt activity. And it could be a science and engineering learning objective, or it could be a different learning objective entirely. Um, so I'll just give folks um, a couple 30 seconds if you could add something to the chat if you wanted to, or pop up. We could think about some learning objectives. All right, does anyone have any learning objectives they wanted?
The one that comes to mind is a learning objective could be how to identify recyclable materials that we could
Sure.
either
Yep.
reuse, like the Roomba example, or how to pinpoint things that we can just put away in a recycling bin, and or give a second life to something. So it could be a good outside of the box
Yeah.
learning objective.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to highlight, since generally the elementary classroom has a lot of time dedicated to ELA specific learning objectives. There are, the discussion and feedback pulls in speaking and listening learning objectives as kids are sharing and commenting. Um, there are a lot of the science and engineering learning objectives around uh, defining problems, creating solutions, looking at what was one just dropped off? Oh, the labeling diagrams. A lot of those objectives around in science or in some of the drawing and art can get pulled into the innovation prompt, and so a lot of times you can use an innovation prompt to address learning objectives across the spectrum. I did notice that Kevin mentioned in the chat that he could see the open-ended prompts being a way to key in on what's on students' minds and what they're interested. And that's great. That's a great connection to make. I've heard from a number of teachers that they like to use um, innovation prompts at the beginning of the year just to sort of get to know their class and see, as you mentioned, the types of things that their students are interested in, so that when they have opportunities to tailor instruction to incorporate student interests, they're able to do that. Great. So let's any other comments or questions in general? Super. So we are more or
I
less
have a
on.
question. Is there a way
Oh,
to
yeah. Yeah.
maybe adjust these prompts for different age groups?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have uh, versions of the Book of Ideas that are aligned with um, kindergarten through middle school, and the prompts do adjust. They do adjust for the different age group. I've run innovation challenges in for high school students where we often use a prompt that says that is something along the lines of uh, design a way to capture the energy you create every day and use it for something useful. And so we've had solutions from, what you might expect of solar power on clothing to a playground that has pressure transducers on the hopscotch area and generators on the swings to a group who designed fidget spinners to capture the energy from fidget spinners to power their phones. Um, so I think we have used some of the science standards to sort of guide the content of the innovation prompts um, from as young as kindergarten to as old as high school or middle school and high school. So they are quite flexible in that way. I think also as students work on them, the the expected output can increase as well by the teachers. So you can, for the youngest students, maybe there's just a diagram. As the students get older, you can require them to label the diagram or to make notes on the diagram. Like, I think they're very flexible. They are very flexible to be tailored both in what the challenge question is or the prompt is, but also in what you expect as a response. We'll move on to the next section, which is really using innovation prompts to give students a reason to write. And just to sort of keep things moving, we typically ask participants to share some of the challenges they find with their students in getting them to write. And here I've just collated a list of what we hear often from participants across the K-12 spectrum on challenges with getting students to write. So first of all, they don't want to write. Second of all, they run into a problem of wide skill gaps in the same classroom, and that can be challenging to have a single lesson that's flexible enough to address or to serve students across a wide set of skills. Following from that, students often have poor sentence structure, trouble organizing their thoughts, which lead to poor stamina, and especially post-COVID with a focus on digital, teachers have found students are really struggling with their fine motor skills, and often students are writing far, far below grade level. All of this means that students become self-conscious about spelling and other weaknesses, and then they sometimes express sort of limited ideas. I don't know what to write about. I don't, there's a barrier, that initial barrier of even picking a topic. And then finally, time pressures just to give students an opportunity to write when there's so many other demands on a teacher's time. So those are some of the challenges we hear about, and then some of the assumptions or um, some of the common strategies teachers mention that improve student writing is that student writing improves when they write often and across all their subjects. So not just in a single subject, not necessarily just an ELA. Another one, which I think is a big one, is when they have the space to work on content and structure independently. So you can work on getting your ideas down without worrying too much about perfect grammar, perfect spelling. And so the fear of making mistakes is sort of removed, and they can work on that stuff later. It always helps to see what good writing looks like. And as with all of us, getting metered feedback, so not getting all the corrections at once, but being able to work on things sequentially so they don't get discouraged. And then finally, when students have a choice of their writing topics, um, it sort of helps across the board. So to summarize this, the general thought is student writing improves when they write a lot with guidance and feedback, good models, and a low fear of failure. So what I would like to do here is what I've done is I've on the screen is an example of student writing associated with an innovation prompt. And hopefully folks can see it, but what I would like to do is for you to take a couple of minutes and see if you can identify evidence in this writing piece that suggests some of these common challenges um, are being overcome or being addressed, and that some of the um, benefits are being supported. So I've put the challenges on the side, um, and then sort of I guess I'm asking folks to sort of read through, look at what's on the screen, and see if see how you think some of these challenges have been addressed. All right, any thoughts, Alejandra or Kevin, that you wanted to
I'm
chime
making
in
the screen a little bit bigger so I can see because it's a
on?
little bit
Sorry.
blurry. Let me see.
I think so. The big one that jumped out at me when I was first working with this student is that the full page of writing um, suggests to me that the full page of writing with sort of messy handwriting and like poor grammar and bad spelling suggests that even though the student struggles with writing and clearly struggles with some foundational grammar skills, they're not holding back. So the nature of the innovation prompt and the excitement that it's created around of explaining their invention has been enough of an incentive to overcome um, any self-consciousness about spelling or grammar or other weaknesses. And um, to me, this is sort of is what it's all about. So that was the big one. Um,
Yeah, it's definitely a full page so that, like you
yeah,
said, it definitely the student didn't shy away. What I
yeah,
also notice is that they're kind of going a little bit step forward and thinking about the reader, and they go out to kind of pinpoint and explain what each part of their drawing or invention is, like just like
yeah.
pointing out what section is what. So that is also thinking a little bit ahead and making it super clear and in making themselves understood. So that's also something that stood out to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think so the label diagram is an additional skill that is being worked on. And yes, Alejandra, building on that, there doesn't seem to be any shortage of ideas from this student, right? The page is filled. They're sort of going. I have seen time and time again additional pages stapled in. So this idea that students don't want to write and that they don't know what to write about, which is very real. I hear it all the time as well. I've experienced it with students as well. Um, I've we've found that the concept of innovation prompts really helps address some of those even starting challenges. Um, So great. So now, let me see if I can move this forward properly. So this is even harder to read. Apologies. It's sometimes hard to figure out the right, the, the, how to make the pictures look pop appropriately. But
Mhm.
this is a writing sample from, so that previous example was a grade 3 student, a third grade student. This is also a third grade student from the same class. And so I was wondering again uh, if um, if folks could think about how this writing example sort of identifies innovation prompts as overcoming some of the common challenges that teachers face when getting kids to write. Yeah, I'm sorry, Kevin. It's very I yeah, apologies for the quality of the photo. Um I can describe the writing. So the writing is very neat. It's quite small, so there's quite a lot of it there. The spelling and the grammar is good. The student has in the on the drawing side, so she's putting solar panels on her shoes to help make them bounce. And the no the spot up in the corner with the sort of like don't enter, no smoking, like the no sign is some describing some feedback she got from her brother of not putting the solar panels on the bottom of the shoes or else they won't work. Um, so uh, so that is sort of what's on the page. Um,
What I can see, like just right off the bat, definitely a much neater, consistent way of writing, a little bit more.
mhm.
So there's definitely one obstacle that has been applied there, like that solution. Also, the way the grammar is also better, in the way they're explaining themselves, like how they're redacting their ideas on paper,
Yep.
as well as uh, on the diagram, which is really good that they're also using visual elements to explain their idea.
Yeah, yeah, this is exactly, and I think all of these point to the thing that jumped out at me and addresses a little bit the question Kevin had about tailoring prompts to older students. Um, as you can see, these are two students in the same classroom with a wide skill gap, um, who are both equally and fully participating in a writing lesson around innovation prompts. And so the lesson is providing for natural leveling um, and with the same structure, students with different skill sets are able to participate equally, and they'll equally be able to orally describe their inventions to get feedback. So a lot of the lesson structure can be constant, even though the writing skill gaps are quite a bit different. And the fact that you have a picture and a written piece, and the picture can be labeled so that there are lots of different entry points into the description and into organizing your thoughts, really helps um, to address wide learning gaps in a single classroom. So, so we like to think of innovation prompts in the Book of Ideas as a science tool, but it is equally, um, or perhaps more so, an ELA or writing tool to help sort of encourage and overcome some of these common writing challenges. All right, so this is sort of, we're nearing the end a little bit, so I wanted to I always like to try to give participants a few minutes of time to think about how they might structure a lesson that includes the instructional tools that we've talked about. I know that uh, webinars or PD typically don't allow any lesson planning time, so just wanted to give folks a chance to think about, if you were to outline a lesson plan, a couple lessons, to use innovation prompts in your classroom to support writing objectives. Like what might be your outline for that lesson series? And I guess a couple things I like to throw out to consider, right? What writing challenges do you want to address or overcome? Like, what are the critical writing challenges for your students? What learning objectives are you targeting, right? What pieces, what speaking and listening objectives, what are the science objectives, what social studies objectives are you looking at, and can you connect an innovation prompt to some other subject so that you can sort of make it dual purpose? And then a little bit, what background or preparation information will your students need? Some amount of writing stamina is necessary, and so I have teachers who like to use it at the beginning of the year, but they make sure their students are able to write, to focus on writing for 3 to 5 minutes to begin with. They making sure your students understand what invention and innovation is and how to get at an innovation prompt is also helpful. So just a couple of things to think about as you're outlining what your lesson structure might look like. All right, a couple wrap up things. This is a great time for questions as well. I like to challenge participants to do a 3, 2, 1 reflection where you think about things you learned or rediscovered during the session. What things are maybe still thinking about or mulling over, not quite not quite sure you're convinced of, or maybe you think might be useful, but you're not quite sure how, and one thing you might try in your classroom. Yeah, Kevin, you mentioned your students can be timid. And I think I that is definitely a challenge. And I think there are a couple of things I like to suggest specifically to address classrooms with timid students. So I think you're bang on by having them start to trust the process is where, and the system is where it ends up. But I, when I am working with teachers to first start using innovation prompts in their classroom, I encourage them, first of all, to have the rules around feedback and to be very specific and very deliberate about how the value of feedback and the role of feedback and how you give feedback. And then at the beginning, I let them know that it's okay to just have the students who want to share out. And so then maybe the students who want to share out in a bigger setting and demonstrate how feedback can be given and it can be useful and can be positive and how well received ideas are. The other thing is they can share in small groups or in pairs, so it's just one-on-one. So that's great. And those are great, great
Kevin
feedback.
He learned, he's sharing a little bit more about things he learned during the session. Thank you, Kevin. Learn how guided open-ended prompts can encourage free thinking. He's wondering how open-minded his students will be to this new approach, and that he'll commit to doing this at least twice before deciding on what to do next for the students. So that is wonderful.
Kevin, what age level are your students? What grade?
I have students in fourth and fifth.
Okay, perfect. Super. So they're right on the cusp of the middle school. I always think
Yeah,
middle school teachers are
right.
so brave. One thing I did mention the Book of Ideas, there are two versions of this. So there's a physical version that can be purchased through WhyMaker, and there is a digital version that does have some access to innovation prompts if you wanted to test them out, and get an innovation prompt bank. You can always sign up for the app, and there's innovation prompts there. And Kevin, since you have fifth grade students and are probably thinking a little bit about the state science test, one of the things we have noticed is that the additional value of these innovation prompts is it helps them make that connection between science skills and ELA skills. And students are really struggling on the state science test to deal with the question, like the question clusters and the reading comprehension portion of the science test now. And even if they have the reading comprehension skills in ELA, they're not connecting that those are applicable to science. And so this is a really fun
Bridge
way
between, yeah.
to prepare for the science test. Anyway, it's something that a piece of feedback that we've gotten that we're hoping to help address that challenge. Great.
Amazing.
Super. And then I think that is the end. So
Amazing. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kath, for that. Such an inspiring and insightful presentation. It's wonderful to see how Curiosity is helping students in not only building that confidence, but bridging that connection, just building a deeper connection to science and innovation, which is wonderful. And I know we've had a lot of participation from our audience today. But if there are any additional questions that you haven't typed into the chat already, feel free to do so now. We'll answer as many as we can. I know we have a few ready questions to ask you, Kath. And we can start with how does the innovative book of ideas and makerspace pack support students with different learning abilities and or styles?
yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question. One of the nice things about the Book of Ideas and the framework that we've built around the curriculum, like the lesson structures with the Book of Ideas and the Makerspace, is that there are lots of entry points into participation. So even starting out with the Book of Ideas, you can start by drawing or writing about your invention, whichever feels more comfortable to you. We've had students start with the drawing and then use the drawing to label and sort of outline their thoughts. So the thought organization helps out. They can use that internally in that same sort of instructional tool. Additionally, the sort of fluid nature of working with the Book of Ideas and working with that content has allowed a lot of English language learner students to sort of think about things in their own language and then work to translate into English. So maybe they do their diagram and the labeling in the language they're most comfortable in, and then they move that over into English writing. So just having that a little bit more scaffolding, the ability to discuss things orally and to talk through things instead of only having written functionality. Again, allows some flexibility for how the students work best to take in information and organize their ideas.
Amazing. Love that. I have one more question.
Yep.
And this is a question I personally like to ask all of our vendors. What feedback have you received from teachers or students or even parents about CreositySpace and how it has impacted them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I appreciate the opportunity to ask it. I think the thing that has at least stuck with me most has been around confidence, and especially from parents and from teachers who have students that receive a lot of intervention or a lot of additional help. The book of ideas and being able to have lessons that they connect to with content that they connect with has really increased their confidence and sort of gotten themselves out of their shells. And we have a couple of students who really struggle a lot with writing, but would start on their own doing sales pitches or commercials for their inventions, and like reached out to neighbors to build their inventions, right? Like it was just students finding all of a sudden finding a space where the fact that even though they weren't a quote unquote good student or straight A student, they were still excelling and participating and achieving at a level equivalent to their peers. It really changed how that permeated all of their other sort of activities, and that is it was great. We weren't entirely like, we didn't know that was going to happen. And so it's been great to hear that time and time again.
Yeah, that is wonderful, especially as a former teacher, seeing those students that are maybe a little bit timid or a little bit insecure, just breaking out of their shell and seeing them just stepping into confidence and just owning and just being so engaged with not just the subject, but just to learn in general.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. A huge thank you to everyone who participated and asked such thoughtful questions today. Your engagement really helps us make these conversations meaningful for our whole community. And we hope that today's webinar sparked new ideas for bringing STEM into your classrooms or programs with CreositySpace curriculum and resources. Also, if you're interested in learning more about CreositySpace and how their curriculum and Makerspace packs, the book of ideas, can support your teaching goals, you can now find their products on the WhyMaker website. Also, important to mention, WhyMaker is a part of nation and statewide purchasing contracts like the BOCES, OGS, and PEPM, just to name a few. So we encourage you to connect with us to explore the best option on how we can help you get CreositySpace into your classroom. So before we wrap up, don't forget to follow CreositySpace and WhyMaker on social media. The handles are on your screen for continued inspiration, classroom resources, and more ways to bring innovation into your learning environments. And be sure to subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss any upcoming Lunch and Learn sessions. Once again, thank you so much, Kath, and to all of you for joining us today. We truly appreciate your dedication to empowering the next generation of inventors. So have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone, and we hope to see you at our next Lunch and Learn webinar.
Thank you both.